We'll go over a few housekeeping notes for the shared virtual space today. And so just please note that everyone is muted and will remain so in order to make sure we don't have any competing background noise during the presentations tonight. But as Hillary said, we invite you to keep cameras on so we can see everyone's smiling faces, see who's here with us in this space tonight. If any of you have issues with video or the quality of your call, then we would suggest you turn off video or find a way to get closer to your router. We are hoping for lots of conversation tonight. So on the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A function. So at any point during the presentations, if you think of a question for our speakers, please feel free to type it in right away, and we will address them during the Q&A portion of the evening. And lastly, for folks who aren't able to join us, we will be recording this evening. That way we can share this resource to other folks who couldn't be here. So to begin the event this evening, I'm going to read the Columbia Land Conservancy's land acknowledgement. We are on the unceded lands of the Mohican, Lenape, and other Algonquin-speaking peoples. CLC recognizes the Indigenous history of this land and supports efforts today to build more equitable spaces for all of the human and non-human relatives who call this place home. Now I have the pleasure to introduce the two speakers this evening, Hillary Hawk and Gwendolyn Van Sant. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks,
Hillary, of course, Hillary Hawk is a founding member of Random Harvest Market, Cafe, and Community Space, a worker-owned cooperative in Craryville, New York, which is committed to creating a more generous, just, and nourished world. She manages the Random Harvest Food Access Fund, which provides free groceries to Craryville residents and supports Multicultural Bridges food distribution to 160 families in the Berkshires. She is a passionate advocate for food justice and loves to uplift and support the amazing BIPOC farms and organizations in our area who are creating access to life-giving food in joyous and powerful ways. Welcome, Hillary Hawk. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Well, now in Candlelight, but but my internet connection is holding so far, so knock on wood.
Wonderful.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is so wonderful to be with you all on this windy night. And yeah, Mallory, are you the one doing slides? Who should I talk to as far as Rebecca is?
It's me.
I just do like a little like
I like that.
okay. So yeah, you can go to my first slide. Yeah, we're Random Harvest is in Craryville, and we've been open for 5 years now, and we sell groceries from local farms and pretty much I'd say like 95% of what we have in the market is locally, regionally sourced. So that's been a huge focus of ours, and we work directly with over 100 local food producers in our area, as well as local distributors that we get things from as well. And we always had a vision for doing some kind of food access fund, and in 2020, after COVID hit, that was the momentum to really do it because so many people were struggling so hard. So we started collecting donations at our register, and we have since raised, Rebecca, you could advance it. Thank you. We've raised almost $60,000 since 2020. So that's just super exciting. And we've done two things with that money. So one thing is supporting local folks right in Craryville near the market. And we started out by just putting flyers in people's mailboxes at the trailer park, which is right up the road from us, and at the apartment building across the way, which we knew was kind of low income housing. So that has been our kind of very simple way of finding folks that we felt could use our support. And so folks, we just started putting $40 food coupons in people's mailboxes that they could bring into the market and just use to purchase whatever groceries they want. And we also were delivering for people when, during COVID, we had an online store going. And so people could also order online and use their food coupon, and then we would drop it off for them. And yeah, I really like this method. It was really important to me to do something that felt less stigmatizing. I grew up on food stamps and going to food banks, and there's just so much stigma around, like, well, the poor people shop over here and they get this other kind of food. And I wanted people to just come into the market and get to purchase whatever food they wanted and have that, just have that power in their life. So we've been, doing that for 4 years now. And then the other thing that we've done is partnered with Bridge. So Gwendolyn reached out to me early on in the pandemic because they were starting to do food distribution. Or I don't actually know, Gwendolyn, you can speak to this if you guys had already been doing distribution for a while, or if you started at the beginning of the pandemic. But she reached out to me and said, hey, would it be possible for you to purchase food for us, so that we could get wholesale pricing for food? And I was like, yes, I would love to support you with that. And so 24,500 of the money that our food access fund has raised, mostly just by collecting donations at our register, has gone to support Multicultural Bridge. And you could advance it. They started out, I feel like there were probably around 30 families, 50 families.
30.
30. So they started out with 30. So the slide is actually wrong. They started out with 30 families, and now we're to 150 or so families. And you can speak more specifically to where we're at this moment. And yeah, and it's a beautiful, big operation, which Gwendolyn will speak more to. And I've been grateful to just be able to support. But we started out with getting deliveries at Random Harvest, and then all these volunteers would come pick them up and load them into their cars and trucks and schlep them over to Bridge, and then all these other volunteers that would help sort it, and then they'd drive it all over the county and drop it off at people's homes, which they are still doing now, and it's incredible. Now we've figured out that we can have some of our distributors deliver directly to Bridge so that they don't have to load it up and schlep it and do all of that. You could advance it. One of the things that was just made it really possible for me to support was just that, as a small grocery business that has developed all these local connections, working with distributors and local farms, it just kind of made it easy for me to source the food that Gwen wants. So she just sends me a big list every for a while it was like every other week, and we've had gaps here and there sometimes where they've taken breaks. But she can be like, can you get me black-eyed peas? And I can like look at all my distributors and be like, yes, I found the black-eyed peas. And the pricing, which I think Gwen is going to give us some numbers on, like how much more food you can purchase wholesale to distribute to people, is like so astronomically more than what they could be purchasing retail. And so, yeah, these are some of the local food distributors that we work with and source from. And you could advance it. The other thing that I was able to do early on, Gwendolyn was asking me if she was like, can we get food from BIPOC farms? Like, do you know of any BIPOC farms? We'd like to prioritize that. And so I was able to bridge with Sweet Freedom Farm, which operates out of Germantown, New York, and is an amazing, wonderful abolitionist farm. And they started at first we were just kind of purchasing produce from them, and then Sweet Freedom the next season started doing full farm shares for folks, as well as installing garden beds and teaching gardening, doing educational programming for community members for Bridge. And yeah, I don't actually know where that partnership's at right now, Gwen. So I'd love to hear how that's grown or shifted. But yeah, that's been a really beautiful part of things. And you could advance it. I don't remember what slide is next. Oh, okay. So yeah, that kind of wraps up what I have to talk about with Bridge, and Gwendolyn will tell us a lot more about all the amazing work that they're doing. But one other thing I wanted to highlight that Random Harvest just recently started doing is that we joined the Double Up Bucks program. That is the New York State program, which matches dollar for dollar. When people make SNAP purchases, they can get up to $20 a day matching that they can then spend on fresh fruit and vegetables. And I'm just so excited to be able to offer this to our community. And it's new, and we have to get the word out and grow it more. And so, please spread the word and share it around and let folks know that anyone who has a SNAP card, anytime they come in to shop, they can earn dollars that they can spend on fresh fruit and produce. And I think we're to our last slide, which is Richard Simmons on a bed of vegetables. And I just thought you all should see this during your lifetime.
That's so wonderful, Hillary. Thank you. And what a fun note to end on.
You're welcome.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Gwendolyn Van Sant. And she is an experienced organizational change consultant and coach who works at the intersection of diversity leadership, equity and inclusion, and strategic planning. She serves as a nonprofit leader, as the CEO and founding executive director of Bridge, and the principal and owner of a consulting firm, Equity in Practice, LLC. A skilled community organizer, Gwendolyn is also a well-recognized thought leader on racial justice, reparations, gender equity, and anti-poverty work. She is a pioneer in integrating research-based positive psychology practices into her equity and inclusion approach. Her most recent accomplishment in 2020 is co-leading the community effort to rename the middle school W.E.B. Du Bois Middle School over the finish line in the last 3 years. In September 2021, Gwendolyn received national recognition as the Drum Major for Justice by the National Community Action Council for her anti-poverty mutual aid response at a community level to the negative impact of COVID on the most vulnerable communities, and the design of the New Pathways program to provide education and equity and justice across all sectors in the forms of labs, talks, conferences, and learning modules. In 2021, Gwendolyn also published oh, sorry.
It's long. That's good. If that's okay with you. Thank you. I think if
And
you
just
there.
a warm welcome to Gwendolyn. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Hi, everyone. And I just want to apologize. I'm getting over a series of winter illnesses, and so my voice is a little weird. But I'm really happy to be here, and I want to thank um, Hillary for recommending me to you all to present about our partnership. And I love all the kind of layups that I got from Hillary. And I'll try to move through these slides quickly, but the one thing that Mallory just said it's just reminded me is that work that Hillary so described of how we started. It did get national recognition for being a model, an anti-poverty model. I think that's a good place for us to jump off of. If we move to the next slide, this is really, to me, at the heart of it, a food sovereignty and empowerment program. Hillary was generous to tell her personal story around access to food and living in poverty. And that's, what we were responding to was that need in our community members at the beginning of the pandemic. We always did work with food, but within our programs, kind of quietly. So this really put that work kind of facing outward. Um, and it was our constituents, those first 30 families that had already trusted our organization that called us for help when I picked up the phone and called Hillary. It was mutual aid was how we started, which was again, always not wanting to just give food out, but coming up with a collaborative community response to deal with the food insecurity that the pandemic was threatening right away. Next slide. You heard a little bit about me and my bio. This is a little bit about our organization. You can see in my background, we just celebrated 15 years. We're excited about that. So we're in our 16th year. Next slide. Again, we were responding to the pandemic, and we work with immigrants, we work with African Americans. The Berkshires is a predominantly white area. So Bridge was a trusted organization. So when people didn't understand what was going on or immediately felt their job security issues become really at the forefront, they called Bridge and said, "What do we do?" And one of the things I was most concerned was, how do I feed my family? So that's where we leaned on our values and our strengths to come up with this program really quickly, within a couple of weeks of us in shutdown. Next slide. We used the model that was coming up of how do we take care of our neighborhoods, which is mutual aid built on a solidarity economy, really building on the strengths of our community, developing communication networks. Hillary described really well, how the volunteers stepped in with their time. We actually partner with arts organizations in the Berkshires, and a lot of them were on layoffs or furloughs. And a lot of those, our clients came and helped us start the mutual aid process, which was cool. I wanted to give these definitions. Mallory mentioned that I do a lot of racial justice work. It's one of the ways in which Hillary and I first met. And we really think that food is a part of the racial justice conversation. That there are food deserts in certain places. That's why I love that Hillary went right into her neighborhood to see what people needed, because a lot of times people in places like where Hillary's located are in food deserts. So that's really important. And then food justice also being food sovereignty. And that's a term that is really important. And again, I just want to repeat, that's having agency over your food, right? Control of your food supply, what type of food you get. So when we're working with food security, our end goal is always food sovereignty. And food security, I'll talk about a little bit more, but that's the just definite access to nutritious food and adequate amounts. So on the next slide, there are 4 pillars of food security that Bridge has done training on for about 10 years. So they're different models, but this is sort of condensing all those models into these 4 pillars. And 1 is the availability of food. 2 is access to the food. 3, the food has to be usable by the people, the end users. And then a stable source. So we've tried to keep our program consistent. Sometimes there have been funding gaps, but for the most part, we've kept this particular program going for 4 years straight. Next slide. When we talk about that utilization, number 3 on the previous slide, we're talking about food that is culturally appropriate. So if we deal with the big immigrant population, they often don't know, they don't even recognize the vegetables we grow in New England. So we did that education that Hillary talked about with Sweet Freedom Farm and a couple other farms, but we also asked what food that they want and the food that we could get access to, Hillary and other folks helped me source. So having culturally appropriate food was important. Having fresh food is important. It has the most nutrients. Having that be affordable is part of the access piece. And again, the nutritious component, we believe our 4 years of work actually saved people's lives because there are a lot of, we're serving BIPOC populations and the comorbidity um, levels were high. And we believe getting fresh food to people and teaching them how to use it and bringing it to their front door actually saved lives through the pandemic. Um, so this was our first celebration, that the first 32 weeks straight from March to the end of the year. This was our success, and you all have the slides so you can look at these later on. So this was 2020, and then if we click, I think this is 2021, and we started talking about how many partners were participating with us. We were at 88 weeks when I did this one. And if you go on to 2022, this was what we did last year, or the 2 years ago. So again, we're counting more numbers and hours and how much is going in to that mutual aid model. And then if you look at 2023, which we've just completed, we haven't done all those numbers of the calculations, but we're beginning to get, how many bags we delivered this year, almost 3,000. We're serving 545 unique individuals. We've also started with the garden and farm project I'll talk to you about. That's again in that food sovereignty space, and how many people have been working with us. So it's a little bit of the features so far. We'll have the second block soon. Next slide. Our philosophy has always been based on this great phrase that we don't just give people fish, which is important, getting people this food that's nutritious and affordable, but also figuring out the rest of the problem. So if you keep going, we have this, you give a person a fish. We also teach people to fish, which Hillary mentioned when we put raised beds where we taught people how to cook New England vegetables, those types of things. And then getting people access to the stream. We have been really working on folks having their garden plots in their homes if they can. Some places they won't allow it. Then we started with community gardens last year. And then this year we started with gardens and farm plots. So getting people access to land to grow their own food and teaching them how to do that and actually build businesses. So we have like an entrepreneurial aspect now. So that's the 4 years in the program, we're kind of able to fill out a whole holistic philosophy on food sovereignty. Next slide. So I think this is just a good slide to think about in that going upstream and getting people access at the stream. We also deal with disrupting the barriers that have been in place for individuals. So it's part of our racial justice work. Next slide. We've talked about this, getting people the food. Our original partners were Woven Roots. It's a local farm here. To have farms which we had worked with in our youth programming since the beginning of our organization, Hillary at Random Harvest, and we connected with some of the local farmers markets as well. And this is our most exciting news. So I took one of Hillary's and my most recent collaboration orders. And now we're up to, at this point, we were doing 154 families. And the bill was $4,201, but Random Harvest through that fund contributed 600. And what we found out was if we had sent each of those individuals' families, those 154 families, to grocery shop, we would have spent a lot more money. So if you see on the next slide, we took the Random Harvest order, the spreadsheet that Hillary and I work on, and then we looked at Instacart and went for the kind of the prices that the grocery, I think our local price trapper has. And we did a comparison, and you'll see that the $4,201 would have cost $9,321. So that's how much savings there is. So all that work that Hillary's team does and all that partnership that we do, it's just all around a positive program. So not only we're saving people's lives, getting their nutritional food, we're saving money. I think this was about $35 a bag for us. In the beginning, we were spending like $25, but that's about the range of what a grocery share is. But I'm so excited about this. I wanted you all to see it and Hillary to see it.
That's so cool. That's so cool, Gwen.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, this is, I think, a little bit more of a repeat, but again, we are teaching people. This was another local farm, the Woven Roots farm. we partnered with NOFA, New England Farmers Association, and we were teaching people how to preserve the food that they were getting for the season. We've also done some of this virtually with Sweet Freedom. The next slide. I talked about the evolution of the program. So one of them is we got a block grant in the Berkshires. Hillary actually helped me. We have our walk-in cooler now. But we're opening up a solidarity kitchen and wash pack house. So now the constituents that are growing their own food, we're going to teach them again how to preserve and use the kitchen for that, but also um, what am I trying to say? Preserve food, prepare food, sell their food, and also this will serve as a wash pack house if they're building their farming business. So this is now a new site that opened up in Great Barrington just 4 months ago. And we also do, yeah. So these are some of the foods that have been cooked with the Random Harvest Bridge deliveries. People send pictures in on our WhatsApp channel. And so we get to see the different recipes that come out of the different homes. So there's one. People share recipes and pictures and gratitude. Next slide. Some other, the kind of wintry warm vegetables. You see the different foods. Next slide. Please, next slide. Yeah, and so then this is sort of like what that looks like when it gets to someone's house. This was a family that just unpacked it all and wanted to say thank you with one of our little bridge kids there. So just kind of, they send pictures and just really excited about the food that they got. Yeah, so right now we're serving, 150 to 160 families every other week, 45 families on the off week. This is during the summer when their shares in the farms are producing. We have to do weekly. And then when it gets to these winter months, we do one larger share, like November through March with Random Harvest. So we have, oops, if you go back, right, in addition to our regular families, since late October, Hillary's also helped me with an ancillary group. We had 36 Haitian refugee families come to the Berkshires. And the first thing they were asking for was a place to cook their food. They're in a motel. They're pregnant women, they're nursing women. People were getting sick. They really, it was just kind of this basic need that they wanted. So in the space that we're still renovating because we're just opening, people have been able to come there and cook their food for their families and take it back to their motel rooms. And Hillary jumped in right away to help me. So there's sort of some off ordering that we're doing to get real specialty foods for the Haitian and Latino families that are being resettled. And we had the Haitian task force come out from Boston, and they were like, these people seem much happier, more settled, and their health outcomes are better. So it was kind of a short-term proof of concept that we're making people healthier by getting them the food that they need, and making it accessible and having them be able to prepare it. So that was really heartening. We heard that just on December 23rd. So we've just learned, how important it is to have people have agency over their food, to listen to constituents about what they need, and to actually give our volunteers the opportunity to serve. Everybody is happy in the end. Next slide. I don't take up too much time. This has been a huge operation, as you can imagine, and you can go back and look at the numbers and the costs. It started with my calling my partners, Random Harvest, and a couple other farms, Taft Farms and Woven Roots. And we put this program together. And as Hillary said, she connected us to Sweet Freedom. Right now we buy $25,000 worth of shares from Sweet Freedom because we've been able to get some grant funding. But there's also Three Sisters is another partner that they plant 50 shares. It was first 25, then 35, now 50 shares. So they grow food on their own property and augment the Sweet Freedom shares. Again, we order through Random Harvest, especially out of the growing season. It's just Random Harvest we rely on. But during the growing season, we also have all these farms that are partnering. And we've applied for funding. So the block grant is what's supported the kitchen and the truck and all those things. But and actually setting up the farm. And yeah, you can skip this slide. That's the status of that. And then these are some questions that when we were talking with Mallory and Rebecca, how to get involved. So we'd always need drivers and we always need harvesters, and just keeping track of all this work so we can give the good data, and supporting the farms that we've talked about, the BIPOC farmers. We also like to support LGBTQ and queer-led farms, but all farmers, and shop at Random Harvest and amplify the stories that you've just heard. And we are working on land trust agreements that are equitable. We are also accepting land donations or kind of land agreements of more land because we've had such a success with the farmers and gardeners that more people in the community want to grow their own, and more people want to start their own farming businesses. And so we're just looking for more land partners as well. That's it, I think. I think that's
Woo! So exciting,
Yes.
Lynn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gwendolyn and Hillary. That was just really, really incredible to hear about the scope of the work that you both are coordinating. Yeah, lots of heart and clapping reacts for you both. So we've entered the Q&A portion of our time together this evening. You'll see at the bottom of your screen a little emoji of little chat bubbles that says Q&A. Feel free to open that up, and if you have any questions, to type in there, and then Gwendolyn and Hillary will be able to answer them live. We do already have one question, and that is from Michael, who's hoping to learn more about Bridge. So Gwendolyn, if you could just speak to the scope of some of the other projects that you're coordinating through the organization.
Yeah, but thank you for that question. I think when you get my slide deck, we are QR codes there, and you'll be able to look at our website and learn more. We're minority and women run as designated by the Commonwealth of Mass. We are also federally designated as a culturally specific program, meaning we're run for communities of color and by community members of color. So our board is 51% led by communities of color and women, and then also our staffing. We do racial justice work. We do education, organizing, and training. We also have an immigrant women's group program that's been running for 15 years, as well as a youth leadership program. Youth leadership is around diversity, developing language. A lot of times when there's school incidents and we respond in a school, we kind of gather the child and invite them into our work, develop leadership skills for them. They meet other kids so they don't feel so isolated in their experiences. And that program's been running, and it's rooted in positive psychology. So we're kind of a holistic approach, being a rural nonprofit organization. Trying to think what else to tell you. We also then have a whole side that's a training arm side where we've worked with our cultural institutions, we've worked with law enforcement, schools, and we provide training in equity, inclusion, and justice work. So it's a little bit about us. It's a little more,
Basically, they
wasn't
do it all.
all with one mission of promoting mutual respect and being a catalyst for change and integration. And we keep looking at our mission, but it still feels like it holds. And you can see our themes for our gala were catalyst, love, and impact. And that was just a really beautiful experience. And I invite you to play on our gala page because you can actually attend it virtually, retroactively, and see the photos and the joy. But yeah, that's us.
Wonderful. We have another question in from Carol, and they'd like to know, how do you get funds for buying farm products?
Or buying what?
For buying farm products, produce.
Grants. Well, Hillary donates at the desk, and we also donate through our donor base. So people give community members support. Our the first time I called Hillary, it was one of our donors who's actually since passed away that emptied out her savings. And she didn't know that she was going to pass away a year and a half later, but she emptied out her savings and gave us $10,000. We found out from her family after she passed that she had emptied out her savings, but she gave us $10,000 to start this mutual aid with those first 30 families. So that's really meaningful to me. And but community members, and we've applied for different family funds, grants, and wherever we can find the support. For a while, our local community action program was supporting us, but in some people's minds, the pandemic's over. But I always say we haven't solved poverty or racism. So I don't know. I don't really see an end to the need for our work right now, but the variety, that was my braiding funding slide. Federal, state funds, community members. Um,
Wonderful. I have a question here for both of you. How are you qualifying, and this is in quotations, qualifying recipients for both the mutual aid funds and just other folks who are getting involved in your organization?
Hillary, I'm talking a lot. Do you want to go first?
Sorry, Mallory, can you repeat it? The storm is distracting me.
That's okay. Carol would like to know, do you, and this is in quotations, qualify recipients?
Oh, well, like I said, Random Harvest, our qualification has been kind of just based on housing. Like we mostly it's the tr folks at the trailer park who we um yeah, just know that's low income housing, and so we have just reached out to them. And then there have been like a few kind of people that found out through community, like a couple of single moms that have kind of joined our list that we give coupons to. We've thought about like, okay, moving forward, if we were to grow this, how would we grow it, you know? Um, right now we aren't really bringing enough funds in to grow, to like add new people. So I would love it if we were, started getting more funds, and then that was like a thing that we would need to figure out. But yeah, it's kind of just been a simple practice for us, as far as who we're giving to locally, and then we also obviously give to Bridge, and Gwendolyn could speak about what that process is.
Yeah, so remember first people that called, they were already our clients. And the way we've always qualified our clients is kind of similar to Hillary. If they are looking for support from us, they've already done an application somewhere and they give us that verification. So it could be housing, it could be WIC, it could be SNAP, it could be fuel assistance. The few folks that come through that haven't already been through those hoops with someone else, we interview, we look at low income, rates. Bridge operates even hiring our staff on a living wage. So if they're under living wage, for their family size, they qualify for any support that we give. You heard me say we prioritize communities of color because they're the most vulnerable in our area and don't access services as much, but we do have folks that are not community members of color because they've identified a need. They have another vulnerability. So there are people with special needs. There are people with life changes that are also in our group. Um, we trust people that if they're asking for help, that they need help. So basically, that's our principle. The people that started aren't the same people that we're serving now. So people also have said, I'm good now, thank you, and have cycled off. I think we built a really strong community with our bridge principles. And, the one thing I didn't talk about is how many of our recipients also work. So they help sort and pack, they help distribute, they grow. The part of that program where we're helping farmers, we actually were able, through our constituents who also receive food, we're able to grow enough food to sell for our B week, the smaller week, and cover the food. So in just 1 year of a pilot in the floods that we had. So that program will be growing through the Massachusetts food purchasing program. So that mutual aid concept of really fostering community being able to take care of itself with the proper supports is what we're focused on.
Cool.
Fantastic, thank you. A follow-up question is, if people request help who are not a part of Bridge, will you serve those folks?
Well, they then become a part of Bridge. So that's the thing. We do an intake and then they become a part of the community. So yeah, we don't, there isn't a way to not be a part of us, kind of, I guess. Well,
Wonderful. One more just came in here. How can people on an individual level help expand community food access? And I'd love to hear that from both of you.
There you go.
Um, well, Gwendolyn had a huge list on that slide that was excellent. You can, donate to programs. You can donate to Bridge, you can donate to the Random Harvest Food Access Fund, um, and you can volunteer, and you can give your land away. I'm a big advocate for land reparations, and I loved what you were talking about, Gwendolyn, as far as growing land access, and it's so inspiring just hearing about all these budding farmers that are now growing food for the community and that you are going to have a wash pack station. I didn't even know about that part of it, so that's super exciting and super cool. And I had a question actually, Gwendolyn. I was wondering about the fairgrounds and that land access, if you might want to share more about that.
Yeah, that's
I
so
don't
that's
know.
what
I don't.
we've incubated. Our solidarity farm garden has been there, and it's central, right, for where Bridge is. It's central to Southern Berkshire. It's not central to the whole county. So a lot of our constituents can get there. The landowners themselves are in constant deliberations with the town of Great Barrington, which Bridge doesn't get involved with. We have a land use agreement for an acre and a half. So the work that we've done is on an acre and a half of their 60 acres. Um, and it's been great. We need more land, we need more space, and that's sort of contingent on the deliberations between the family and the town, or other properties. The family members actually have their own personal property, and that Three Sisters is a part of that. So the owners have multiple ways that they support Bridge, and so Three Sisters is a space where they have 12 acres, which they've offered to begin to incubate farmers, but that land requires some work, and we have to have more infrastructure for that. So I don't know if that answers your question. So the fairgrounds is where we are right now, that where we can stay for right now on that acre and a half. Right now, people have seen and heard the success or experienced it themselves. So there's a request right now for more land than we have for the next season. And there's a request for constituents we have in other parts of the county to grow, which we don't have those relationships yet with landowners. Um, so that's where we are. Like the first year at Fairgrounds, we had 27 raised beds, and this year we have the acre and a half. So it's a considerable growth for us.
All right, wonderful. Thank you both for answering those questions. Um, we have one question that came in is, will either of you help accept people from Columbia County? If you both want to speak on your reach of the organizations, because I know we have a little bit of a different geographic focus for both of you, if you could speak on that.
I feel like Hillary's my neighbor. I mean, our counties, and from where I sit, it takes me an hour and a half to get to the northern part of our county. It takes me a half hour to get to Hillary. So when I talk about our partnership, I mean, I feel like, we're still one community. Sweet Freedom is also in New York. So I think in our network, even if it's
Mhm.
not in this particular conversation I've had with you, but through Hillary and the network that she's helped me build out, right? Like I do believe there's access.
Yeah, yeah. It's making me think that there's another food access thing I should highlight that just started, which is Zinnia's Dinette, which is just up the street from Random Harvest, like two doors down. Um, it's a little diner, and she just opened a free food pantry. She just put up a little shed outside that is now being stocked for folks to take food whenever they want. And so that's something to be aware of as a resource. And that's another great way to support is you can go put put food in that shed anytime. And I think they're working on getting electricity out to it so that they'll have so they can have a refrigerator and have refrigerated food. Um, so again, that's like almost right next door to Random Harvest. And we've been doing another small thing, which is on Tuesdays we put like close to date food or bread that's like a few days old out for free on Tuesdays, just so that we're not throwing food away and people can come take stuff home. Um, yeah, and like I said, as far as like growing our who we're giving coupons to, I would love to grow that, but we do need we would need to figure out how to increase funding in order to be able to offer that to more folks in the community. So if anyone wants to help increase funding, help
Yeah.
me increase the funding, then I'd be happy to give more food away.
So perfect segue, Hillary, because Kate just sent in just saying that they are blown away by both of your work. And they asked to put the links to both of the websites into the chat. So both of those websites are now in the chat box. So please take a look. Both Gwendolyn and Hillary have given a lot of great calls to action. If you feel moved, go take it out, go do some research, check out those links in the chat. And I have another question here as well from Charlene, and they are wondering, does the landowner, and this is back to kind of land access, provide fencing and other infrastructure for plots that they've donated to be farmed?
So the answer, so I'm going to start with reminding you that we do race equity and justice and reparations work. So the visual and also the impact of having white landowners with BIPOC farming is something to contend with. So with the owners and their intentions to be supportive, we've actually asked them to kind of let us farm, right? Let us figure it out and let us do it, just like teenagers or kids, like let us just do it. That being said, for first year, they helped a little bit more with irrigation and mowed. This year, the owner is still mowing. Um, we started a tilling process with them, and again, it just felt better if we figured it out on our own. So then we finished the tilling process. And I think that's it. If we need advice on the land, they have values about the ecosystem there that we honor. We have our racial justice kind of needs and boundaries that we put out and they honor. And it's a work in progress. It's very challenging, and it requires relationship and trust and a lot of communication. So I would just say that. But the idea of like if you are giving up your land, that's the easiest. If you're in a land use agreement, it's constant um, negotiating, self-education, education, and conversation, but both groups being really clear about values and boundaries, making sure there's alignment, and then just committing to do the work. So there's a lot of work behind, being in relationship with landowners. And there's good models that we've researched, and there's ways in which, because it's the work I do, that, I've been able to guide our process. Um, and yeah, I think and hopefully that's answering a little bit about that. I also I don't know where it's going, but I put Sweet Freedom's link because they are New York based, as Hillary said, and they're just amazing partners with us. I feel really honored to be still in partnership with them. So that's another one to share. You're in New
We've
York.
added that to the chat as well, the Sweet Freedom Farm website. One more question for both of you. What are some systemic or political barriers that make your work more difficult?
Just access to funds and resources for me. The one thing that I will say is that I actually had to kind of go out of my neighborhood to get the support because people, they discomfort with the shift in the profile of who's a farmer and who has access to farming because there's already such a deficit mindset and experience of farmers, right? And so then to let other people in to that space is threatening. And so I've been able to partner with a group, World Farmers, which is out in Lancaster, Mass, which is 2.5 hours away. But they have for 30 years been creating a flats mentor program with immigrants and refugees. So they provide technical assistance. We collaborate on funding to the state. So versus my being able to do it with our local food system, I'm having to go 2 hours up the street or a half hour into New York. And as the model is becoming clear, more and more of the partnerships are growing in my neighborhood, so to speak, in my county. But it has been hard to penetrate. And with my advocacy and my protectiveness of our community, I've gone with partners that are values aligned, but things will get easier and is necessary as we grow to be working more locally. So that's been our biggest. Folks, when the flooding happened, we were in line for some grants, but then they're like, "Oh, your program's too new. There's people really suffering," and they took funding away from us to put it with the other farmers. That was really ugly this summer. Because our stuff was successful, but we needed the resource we didn't have it without it. Um, so those kinds of things, access to resources, who's deserving, dealing with unaddressed isms in systems, and also being able to do the work, which everybody knows farming isn't easy, and doing the education and having this public health model be at the center for us is a lot to balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I knew offhand, Gwendolyn. Maybe you do, but I think it's useful information for folks to know that like land access for people of color is so tiny. Like the amount of land that, is in the hands of Black farmers today has significantly shrunk in the last,
Yeah.
150 years. I don't, do you know the statistics, Gwendolyn? I feel like it's like 4% of farmers are
Yeah, no, I'm gonna look really
under,
quick. I mean, who I rely on
yeah,
to keep us up to date is Leah Penniman's work, right? Soulfire Farm. But yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, access is hard, and people being able to even acknowledge there is an access issue is where my work is right now. It's like at the basic.
yeah. Yeah, so if people aren't already aware of that, that's just a huge, that's just something that's huge in our country is like really needing to create access and reparations for people of color to have land use and have and be able to create food sovereignty and food systems for themselves.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have, time for just one last question. And so, what I would love to know from each of you is if people walk away from this conversation tonight, what is one thing that you really want people to take with them moving forward when they think about access to food? It's broad. But any key takeaways you'd like folks to carry with them after hearing all of your expertise and your organizational pursuits?
I said it on our call that what Bridge and Random Harvest have been able to do together um, is amazing. It's work, but it's not been awful. And I think it's a model that other people could do, right? It's just thinking out of the box, again, having the trust that I could call and say, Hillary, this is what I need. And, Hillary worked, but her whole team worked. And sometimes we were taking over their store before we figured out other ways to do things, so there was discomfort and disruption. But I think that the model, it speaks like the cash that I talked about, right? Our market research, the health outcomes, right? The people being connected in community. I can't tell you how many of our white volunteers are so happy to have relationship with the other people that are being quote unquote served. They're packing food together, they're harvesting together. So it's done so much more for our community than I can even quantify in this presentation, but I think that that's what I want people to know. So we're tackling this problem of food access, and it was motivated by something huge like the global pandemic. But I think it's just a model that people could explore in their communities. I'm very big on decentralizing the food system, again, so that people can, have access and sovereignty and work together as a community. So I think that's what I hope people take away and find a way to plug in. That's why I made my big list that Hillary talked about at the end. I skipped when you hopefully you take the PowerPoint home and look at it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking about how joyful this is and how much I love working with you, Gwendolyn, and just what you were just sharing now about the relationships that have come out of this. I always feel like, yeah, like we have some kind of misrepresentation in the world that things need to be hard or feel bad or something. And I feel like the path of goodness is actually the path of joy, and it's so beautiful to be in connection and in community and feeding each other. Like to me, cooking a meal with friends and family, growing food together, processing food, harvesting food, canning food, that those are the most joyful things in life. And so just that we, yeah, I just want people to walk away with this feeling that we can do this in joy, in community, and have fun, you know? Like it's hard work, but it can be fun, you know? Um,
I think that that's the perfect note to end on. And just, I know we're all in different places, but just a round of applause and my truest and deepest, sincerest thank you is to Gwendolyn and Hillary for joining us tonight, and to everyone who took a little bit of time out of your Tuesday evening to be with us. Thank you so much. I'll be following up tomorrow with a recording and all of the good resources we talked about tonight. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for
High
tuning
five,
in.
Hillary. High five.
Thank you.
Love you, Gwendolyn.
Thank you.
Have
Thank you.